You know what, Brandon?
What?
We're getting closer to the playoffs.
Yes, we are.
All right, so we are back with another episode of the Caniac Report. And as you can see, Sam Wallace is MIA today, and we've got Brandon from the Warning Take. Thanks for hopping on and having fun with us today.
Awesome, very much. Thank you for having me.
All right, before we get into anything crazy, I'm going to talk to you guys about our podcast news. So, as you hear every week, we got SeatGeek coming on as a sponsor of ours, as they always have been. Use promo code Caniac Report, and you will get $20 off your first purchase. Like I like to say, you don't want to leave free money on the table, so you make sure you take advantage of that. The playoffs are coming up. Baseball's getting ready to start if it's not already starting up, as I'm sure Brandon is aware. And all different kinds. If you want to go to a March Madness game for basketball, use SeatGeek. Those tickets are probably crazy expensive. Might as well
Yeah.
take 20 off. All right.
No, baseball actually started today.
Oh, so baseball started today. So if you want to go to a
Yes.
baseball game all over the place, use our promo code, get yourself a discount, and go catch a baseball game. And I'm guessing the local team really for Raleigh would be Atlanta. So go to Atlanta, catch a game, enjoy yourself.
Yep, that's the way I see it. I was just watching them in their lose before I got on here.
Yeah, that is absolutely fair. I know most people know my opinion on baseball isn't overly.
Yeah, I won't repeat what was said in the group chat. It was not nice. It was all in good fun, but people would think like, "Wow, Brandon, that was mean."
And before we get moving on to other stuff, I want to congratulate Luke Wally on his winning our ticket giveaway and getting to go watch Carolina play the Nashville Predators, which is our next topic of conversation. I'm doing things in reverse or a little bit different order today since we've got Brandon on. I want to talk about the game first, so we're going to talk about the game. We're going to have a little bit of an ad break. Then we're going to get into the meat of the episode since there was only one game. We're going to talk about the NHL news, Hurricanes news on the back half of this episode. So, Brandon, we had the game against Nashville. I was there with a couple of friends, and just broad strokes, the atmosphere felt kind of meh in that game. I don't know if it was I was sitting in the upper level corner. I don't know. It didn't seem very. The fans didn't seem engaged.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you could tell that on TV. If you watched the game, it wasn't all that loud. It was just one of those. I think it was it was Tuesday night. Or what was it? No, was it Tuesday night?
Yeah, it was Tuesday.
Tuesday night.
It sounded a little quiet in there to me on TV. It really did. I didn't really think much of it because I was relatively happy with how the team was playing. I just hate they didn't get a good result out of that one. But the crowd did seem a little light, a little out of it.
And I think because we had talked a little bit about it in the group chat. So for those who did know, that game was flexed out of prime time. And I think the belief was when the schedule was made, Nashville was going to be in the thick of things. They fell out. Well, Tampa was in the thick of things. So Tampa and Carolina last Tuesday got the prime time, while this game was flexed out of prime time. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think a lot of it was maybe some fans didn't get there until later and they just never got in the game. Because Carolina, while I agree, I think overall, if we're going to broad stroke it before we get into the goals, I thought Carolina was the better team most of the night. I think they got goal lead, I think is the best way to say. Saros is an absolute stud of a goaltender on a team that just is struggling to kind of figure it out. And if you're on a goalie on a team that's given up a lot, I mean, you're only human unless you're like Marty Brodeur. You're not going to go out there and win half the season for your team. So, I mean, I don't know if that's how you viewed the game, but I kind of viewed it as Carolina was the better team. It showed that they were the better team. But at the end of the day, it proves this is why you want a goaltender.
Yeah. So my biggest thing about it is I posted something about this right after the game was over. That term getting goalied, it seems like it applies to us more than it should. That being said, it has not happened lately. That happens to every team, though. Every team is going to get beaten by a hot goaltender at some point or another during the season. It's 82 games. It's going to happen at least a few times. The only time that you have to worry about it is if it starts happening frequently. And Carolina in the past has had that problem where it's frequent. And a lot of times you lose to goalies that are as good as UC Saros, like you did the other night, who's one of the best goalies in the league, or you lose to Kirill Melka. And that's where it becomes a problem. In this case, you lost to a really, really, really good goalie, and it's not happening as much. So some people were online panicking about it, saying that, oh, we're going in the wrong direction and all this other stuff. And to which I wanted to tell them, if we start going in the wrong direction, Sam Driscoll will be the first one to raise that red flag. So we are fine. It's just, if that happens once in a while, it's no big deal. It's if it starts happening night in and night out, seemingly as it has in the past, then we have an issue. I have no complaints about this team right now. I love everything they're doing.
Yeah, I thought the forwards played really good. I thought the shot totals were indicative, right, of this game. I think in the first period I don't think they got above 10 until towards the end of the second period, and it was just stifling defense. Carolina's forecheck was on point, and that brings us to, again, they didn't shoot a lot. It was the first shot on goal. Michael Bunting, former Carolina Hurricane, net front presence. He was there, beat out, I don't remember who in this moment, but beat out one of our guys. Just popped the puck. Kochetkov, I think.
He thought he had it.
My thing here is Kochetkov attempted to make an unnecessary save, and it burned him.
Yeah.
The puck wasn't even on net. Us side of it, he didn't know where it went, fell back, Bunting scooped it, popped it in the empty net. That's his game. Michael Bunting is net front guy. He's going to get in the front of the net. He's going to cause some problems, and that's why we signed him. Unfortunate we didn't keep him, but that's what Michael Bunting does, and it was a good goal. I don't like that. It's the one that Kochetkov can't allow, in my mind. But that's Michael Bunting. That's what he's going to do.
Yeah.
It's a hardworking goal, and at the end of the day, where I don't think Kochetkov should have. I think that one's on Kochetkov. I think it's a good goal. I think it's a hard-working goal, and I give Michael Bunting all the props for it.
Yes. And another thing about the shots, when you were saying that they were held to less than 10 at one point, like during the second period or whatever it was total throughout the game, I think only 7 or 8 of those came 5-on-5 as well, because the rest of them were on the power play. So, the team, I felt like they were really good. They dominated possession. They were good defensively. It was a marked improvement over what happened in L.A. Those defensive zone breakdowns in LA were awful, and there's been nothing remotely close to that in the last 2 games.
And I agree. I mean, this game wasn't a Hurricanes players playing poorly. Again, it was like we said, we got goalied. I mean, Saros was just unbelievable.
Yes.
And again, we moved to the end of the first. Carolina's a better team. Move on to the second period. Carolina's got some good chances there, but Evangelista, again, net front, saw hardworking goal, puts one past Kochetkov. Again, I think you can make an argument that Kochetkov should have had all 3 of the goals here. I think the last one maybe a little bit less so, but it was. You go down 2-0. It's frustrating. You're sitting in the crowd. It's like, what the heck's going on here? Carolina's a better team. We're losing to Nashville. It's frustrating.
It is, but like I said before, as long as it's not becoming frequent, it's not really a problem.
And that's why, again, if you play in a way where you're just dominant, you're going to have games where you are the better team and you're going to lose. It's just hockey. It's part of life, right? It's the minority versus the majority, right? If they were playing like they did against LA, I'd have a problem. They clearly were not playing like they did against the Kings.
Yes. That's the big thing to look for, is consistency. As long as consistency's there, you're going to lose games regardless. But as long as you're not getting blown out consistently and you're playing with consistency and playing to your strengths like Carolina has lately ever since a certain player departed, then everything is fine.
Yep. No, and I agree. But you know what? The hottest player on Carolina right now, Taylor Hall, gets yes, you heard it right, a power play goal. And it was an unbelievable play from Taylor Hall. Great pass from Jarvis, and Taylor Hall just made Saros look like he just completely deked him out.
Yeah,
broke
he
his
burned
ankles,
him.
whatever you want to say.
Yeah, and no, that entry was really good. Good heads up play by Gostisbehere to get it to Jarvis in the first place. And Jarvis had the wherewithal to make that quick little one-touch pass because Taylor Hall already had the speed when he was coming up the wing. And then, like, when you already have that much, like, when your wheels are already going that hard, it makes it a whole lot easier to pull off a move like he did because nobody's going to stop you at that point. So that was the highlight of that evening. That made me happy. I'm hoping the power play can really get going in the right direction now. One thing I talked about in the past was, hey, Taylor Hall's an experienced guy. He's done a lot of time on the power play in his career. Maybe it'd be good to bump him up to the first unit, and it looks like it's improving the first unit significantly.
Yeah, I had kind of made some comments to Sam about it as well. I was like, Taylor Hall's been one of our better players. Maybe it's time to bump him up because he's clearly the best part of the second unit. You're right. I mean, we've been right. It's paying off. Also, for the record, Gostisbehere got a point in your game here against Brady Shea. I believe Brady Shea also had a point in this game.
Brady Shea won the Agenda Cup 5-1.
Oh, he did.
So, well, yeah, ultimately because it was 1 point for every assist, 2 points for every goal, and then whatever respective points the teams got in the standings. So Nashville beat us twice in regulation. That's 4. Brady Shea has an assist. That's 5. Gostisbehere had 1 assist, so he lost 5-1.
Fair enough. And I mean, again, also for the record, this was Brady Shea's homecoming. Standing ovation from the crowd. He was a great Hurricane. And I wanted to think they had someone else from the Hurricanes too, but maybe I'm remembering wrong. That's right, Bunting. Yeah. I was trying to think there was someone else, but I thought we were missing a tribute video, but Bunting wasn't here long enough.
He wasn't here that long, yeah.
Go to the third period, and all I'm going to say there is Evangelista gets a goal. That's 3-1. That's pretty much backbreaker, and that's ball game. Carolina had some chances there at the beginning of the third to tie it. We're not able to. So when Nashville scores to make it 3-1 towards the end of the third, that was kind of it. Taylor Hall also almost got his second of the night, but it was almost put in his own net.
Yes,
and
I remember that.
And I mean, when that happened, my eyes just got wide, and it hit the post. I was like, "Oh, thank God!" I said, "You know whose goal that would have been, right?" And they were like, "No." It's like it would have been Saros. He was the last Predator to touch it.
Oof. That would have been the most Carolina Hurricanes thing ever if that had happened.
I think it's happened before, except we were the beneficiary of it. That's how Cam Ward got his goal.
I was going to say, yeah, Cam Ward was credited with a goal one time because of that. But he's also the only guy I've ever seen get a puck stuck in the holder of his skate and accidentally go over the goal line, and it counts.
Yeah, that was one of those. Yeah, I remember that. I was like, oh my God, okay. But yep, that's pretty much the game. Carolina, the better team, did not get the better result, but you lose 2 points to a team out west that's out of the playoffs. No love lost there. Carolina is not in any danger of getting bumped out of the second wild card spot. The only thing you might hurt yourself here is maybe a potential low chance of catching the Capitals. Do I think that's likely? Nope. But again, that's really all the damage that was done there. Something very unlikely became less likely. So, like I said, no harm, no foul. This game really wasn't all that big of a deal, and I don't know how much of these games left are going to be as big of a deal going down the stretch. I do think it might be start to time just because I think the Devils are in free fall. I think, and it sounds like there's issues in the locker room there with the coach and a certain player. I can't remember the name of this player, but
Kovacevic. I believe it was.
Sounds like Sheldon Keefe and him are not getting along very well at all, and I don't think Carolina's in any danger, but I do think it might be start time to take a look at some of these games and resting some guys. Just brief thought about that before we take an ad break. Do you think it might be time to start looking at resting players here and there? If you're not 100%, you don't play?
Yes. Reason being is because once everybody gets healthy, there's already a difficult decision to make. Okay, you already know if everyone's healthy, Tyson Yost is one of the guys you scratch, but then you've still got an abundance of players that have played really, really well, and you can make a case for any of them being in the lineup. Now, the downside of that is that come playoff time, it's probably going to sort itself out because there's no way we're going to go to the rest of the season without any more injuries. But in the meantime, I say you rotate a guy out and put someone in and do that through every single game from now until the end. Let guys get rested if they've got something bothering them. Now that this is a good problem to have. Like, Robinson comes out one day and Carrier goes in for a day, or, whoever. Jordo comes out for a day, Yost goes in for a day, whatever. Rotate a guy out. It will not hurt the team at this point. We're not moving out of second. Like that. That's pretty much that.
Yeah, we're pretty much locked into a game against the Devils. Now, I could see the Devils falling out a second if they truly melt down, which would put us against the Jackets or the Islanders, I believe, is the
I
current.
would like to see
No,
us play the Jackets if they were to get there.
it
I
would be the
believe that.
Well, I don't know because the two wild cards right now are Montreal and Ottawa, so those are two Atlantic teams. So I don't know. I mean, New Jersey is. I think New Jersey is solidly where they are, but they could fall. If they fall, they'll fall to wild card versus the out of the playoffs. But
I
you never
agree.
know.
Yeah, I would
I
just like to
don't
see
want
us
to
play.
the Islanders.
I'm tired of seeing us play the Islanders. I want to see us play somebody different. That's why I was hoping Columbus would make it. Like, I don't think that
If
would
we
be an
play
easy.
Columbus, I'm going to a game in Columbus.
Oh yeah, no, I would love to do that. And the other thing about it is it's like Columbus, that poor franchise has been through a lot lately. So I would like to see them make the playoffs in general. But at the same time, one of the reasons why I hate the NHL playoff format so much is because, how many times have we played the Islanders since 2019? 3, right? So it's
Yep.
like I want to see somebody different. Like we've already played the Devils in pretty recent memory. We played the Rangers 3 times if you count the qualifier during the bubble year. I want to see us play somebody different for my own amusement. And that's not me thinking that Columbus would be an easy out. They would not be.
No.
But I just want to see something different.
I completely agree. All right, we're going to take a quick ad break here, and then when we come back, we're going to talk NHL news, Hurricanes news, and have some good conversations. Sound good?
This NHL season has been as predictable as a puck rolling on its edge. No one knows where it's going. That just means there's time for your favorite team to figure things out, and games left for you to get in the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. And if you are new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Bill Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. New customers only. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. NHL and NHL team marks are the property of the NHL and its teams. NHL 2025, all rights reserved.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Let's get into NHL news. There's actually been quite a bit of that around the league. First, Jacob Chychrun gets an 8-year, $9 million contract extension in Washington. Heck of a defenseman. I saw him have probably one of the best games of his time in Washington when I was up Caps versus Penguins. Great for the player to get the contract. He got Dougie Hamilton money. He is not Dougie Hamilton's skill level, so I think it's a puzzling contract, but maybe the sign of the cap going up. What are your overall thoughts on the contract and maybe the player?
Primarily, I think the reason why the amount was so, and we're going to see this a whole lot more. Like this offseason, you're going to see some signings that you're like. There's going to be a general consensus. A lot of them are overpays, and that has nothing to do with it. It's mostly the cap going up, like you were saying. So I think that that's a big part of it. Chychrun is a lot like Gostisbehere in terms of his skill set. Offensively minded, two-way guy. And I think one of the biggest reasons they wanted to lock him up is John Carlson has more of his career behind him than ahead of him. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's where they see Chychrun fitting in for them long term. And everyone up here likes him. He's been a great fit for them. He's exceeded the expectations when they traded for him and everything, because they gave up a really good shutdown defenseman and Nick Jensen to get him, even though Washington had so much trouble defending last year. One of the concerns was that, him coming in here, Chychrun, was that he wouldn't help that problem, that you would lose too much of defensive capability with Jensen, and that Chychrun would be too much more of a loss on that end. And he has not been. He's been remarkable at both ends of the ice. I think it's a slight bit of an overpay, but at the same time, it's the market for it makes sense. Now, do I think that he should make more money than someone like, say, Jacob Slavin? No, but Jacob Slavin also took a pay cut voluntarily. But I think it's a fair contract, maybe a slight overpay, but not an egregious one.
Yeah, and I agree. The more I thought about it, the more I was like, this isn't Dougie Hamilton money. It's Dougie Hamilton money was different under a different cap, right? The cap just went up, was going to go up $4 million. This basically $4 million this offseason. So, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, Washington's also, if you look at it, they're going to have Ovechkin come off the books after next season. So they're going to start having some cap space available as well. This Chychrun deal is not going to handicap them for any extended period of time. But just basic Caps news, I think it's important to say Ovechkin's 6 goals away. And the reason I say it's important to say is it's not on my notes, but the Caps play Carolina twice in the next couple weeks. So Carolina, unfortunately, probably has some of the highest possibility of it happening against Carolina. I've just brief thought about it happening against the Hurricanes. Potentially happening that Ovechkin breaks the goal record against Carolina.
Well, one of the reasons why I didn't get tickets to the April 10th game is, I'm no fan of the Washington Capitals by any means. They're probably in my top 10 most disliked teams. That being said, I didn't want to take a seat away from somebody who would appreciate it if he did break the record on April 10th. So otherwise, I would have bought tickets months ago. Now they are outrageous.
Oh, absolutely. Tickets here, cheapest you're going to get is $200.
Yeah. So up here, the lower bowl, I'm finding ones that are like the lower you get, they're like 450, 500 plus before you even talk about fees and everything. That's why I was hoping he would just hurry up and break it, because then hopefully those tickets will drop. So as long as they don't have like a pregame ceremony or something for him like that, depending on when he breaks the record. I kind of wish he would just hurry up and get it over with before we have to worry about it. A good friend of mine up here, he is thoroughly convinced that he's going to do it in the Columbus game, the one in Nationwide. Is when it's projected to happen, he thinks. And he's been pretty accurate so far.
I'm just checking real quick. So Ovechkin plays tonight. He's 6 away. So he plays tonight. That's game 1. Game 2 is Buffalo this Sunday. Game 3 would be Boston on Tuesday. Game 4 is Carolina at Carolina on Wednesday. So if Ovechkin's 6 away, it is feasible that he breaks it in Carolina. But as I look at their schedule, I think he breaks it Friday against Chicago.
I'd rather that be the case. I really would.
And that's a home game for the that's also a home game for the Caps. Then they would play the Islanders that Sunday. Then they get 3 days off. They play Carolina again at home, and then it's Columbus back to back. So, could Ovechkin do it in Carolina? Maybe.
If he comes in within 3, if he's within 3 on the day of the game on April 2nd, then I would be worried about it a little bit.
I would too, which is possible. He could get within 3.
If he's within 3, I'd be worried about it at that point. If he's not within 3, it wouldn't happen then. See, that's kind of the magic number with it. If he's within 3 on April the 2nd, then if he's like at 4 to go, which I think is reasonable to say that's about where it'll be, then you don't have to worry about him breaking it against Carolina at all at that point, because he would break it in between the April 2nd and the April 10th game more than likely. So.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not as concerned about the one in Carolina. I think he could get pretty close. I don't care if he ties it in Carolina. That's fine. Don't break it in Carolina.
Yeah, so like if he's outside of 4, then it's no big deal.
But yeah, I just wanted to have that quick conversation because I think it's relevant to talk about, and you and I don't get to talk all the time. So I wanted to have that conversation since we talked about Chikrin. It is going to happen. Ovechkin is going to be the greatest goal scorer of all time. It's just a matter of if it happens in Carolina, and they have two chances for Columbus and Carolina. There are 2-game caps. Play them twice down the stretch. So I think those are good chances. Although if I'm a betting man, I think it's a pretty good chance it happens against Chicago because Chicago's so bad. So Ovechkin could pot 2 or 3 there. Wouldn't shock me.
Oh, here's one theory I have. He's going to get within one. He's going to miss the net a bunch on purpose until they go to Pittsburgh, and then he's going to break it there.
Do they
That
play
would be
Pittsburgh?
they play Pittsburgh one more time this season in Pittsburgh.
That's the last game of the season. That would
That
be
would
overly risky of him to do that.
It would be, but at the same time, it's kind of like the millions of times he got eliminated from the playoffs by them. I think that maybe he just wants the ultimate. I don't think he's going to do it. That's just me goofing off and joking and everything. But I know so many people up here who are buying tickets to games anywhere where they think that he's going to break it, and then when when the numbers don't line up, they sell them again. It's been pretty crazy. But I'm hoping that he'll just do it between April 2nd and April 10th, so I can actually go to the game on April 10th because I cannot afford it right now.
No, I don't blame you. But that's about it for what's going on there. It's relevant to Carolina because, well, it could happen in Carolina or against Carolina. Next bit of news, I think, is the biggest piece of news that's come out today. John Tortorella was fired as head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers, and Brad Shaw has become the interim head coach. This came as a little bit of a surprise until I read the quote from Tortorella that he has no real interest in coaching the way they are down the stretch. And my guess is that means he doesn't want to coach a team that doesn't care or the games they don't matter. With my when I saw the quote initially a couple days ago, my interpretation of it was, I don't care because I don't want to be in this situation. I want to be coaching meaningful games, and he doesn't have any interest in coaching non-meaningful games. I didn't take it as much. I guess the front office took it as something, and they decided to move on from John Tortorella. I think he is one of the top 5 best coaches currently in the National Hockey League. I don't think he's the problem with that team, but that is the decision the Flyers made, is to move on from John Tortorella. What are your thoughts on the move?
I don't really think he was the problem either. Torts is kind of like Brendan Moore in a certain very specific regard. There are certain types of players who will gel with that type of personality and play the way that he wants them to, and there's just some that will not. Now, Tortorella's methods of how things are done on the ice and how often he raises his voice and all that type of stuff differs heavily from Brendan Moore. But as far as like players having some sort of like just not being a good fit underneath his system, that makes sense. I don't really think he was the problem there. I understand some of the complaints about Michkov's deployment, for example. A lot of people blame Torch for ruining Cam York. I don't believe that either personally. I think he's a very, very good coach. It's just he has to have the right group of guys around him to really show how good of a coach he is, because we remember when he coached the Rangers back in the day, he had a group that, fit his style very well. Yep. I don't think he was the problem either, so I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah, I thought he's a heck of a coach. Where do you think he's going to end up next? I think Pittsburgh.
I could see him landing there maybe, but it's also like he did the broadcasting stuff for a little while. I wouldn't be surprised if he finally just says, you know what, I think I've had enough coaching. Because one of the things that if he went back to ESPN, I'd actually be happy about it, because I actually liked a lot of the things that he had to say on ESPN. And he wasn't like an automatic contrarian, but I did like him in terms of being
You liked Carolina a lot.
Yeah, it's like I felt like he gave people more of a fair shake, whereas some of the other guys on there, they tend to appeal to certain markets over other ones. Torts, it was more of he just called balls and strikes. He called it how he saw it, and he was very unapologetic about it, and I like that about him.
Yeah.
And he's the same way as a coach. So like if he didn't want to coach anymore and just went back to doing that, I think he could do that too. But Pittsburgh seems like a good landing spot for him.
So the only thing I want to talk about real quick just about that as it relates to Carolina, say like Tim Gleason or I'm blanking on his name.
Jeff Daniels
goes somewhere. Griff mentioned, he said he wouldn't mind Tortorella being an assistant in Carolina. I don't think he would ever be anyone's assistant except in an Olympic scenario. How would you feel if John Tortorella was an assistant coach in Carolina?
One question about that. What is the combined power play percentage of all the teams he's ever coached?
Probably not very good.
That's
But I
the
don't
old
know.
that would be the one hang up. But no, he would never be an assistant coach. He's graduated from that. It's or he's very, very well removed from that. Um I don't see him doing anything like that. I think if he does anything, it's head coach or not coaching at all with him. I think
I agree.
maybe I could see him being an advisor of some sort, maybe, but like if he's going to be behind the bench, he's going to be the one in the middle. And then on top of that, I wouldn't want him to be the assistant coach. If he were replacing Daniels, it would be one thing. Gleason, on the other hand, though, I got no complaints about Tim Gleason for one thing, and two, it's just like I can't think of another defensive coach out there that I'd rather have. I think he's done really good with that blue line.
Oh, my scenario was Tim Gleason getting his own bench.
Well, that's a distinct possibility considering how good he's done in Carolina. I don't know if Torts has ever coached defensemen, though. I think he was a forwards coach before becoming a head coach, if I remember correctly.
Definitely possible. All right, on to the next bit of news here. As we're done talking about Tortorella, again, good coach. He will land on his feet, no doubt, whether it's ESPN or a head coaching job. Next is the date for the NHL Draft Lottery will be May 5th or 6th, and October 7th will be the start of the 2025-2026 NHL season. None of those dates are overly shocking there. The NHL season usually starts early October, and then you have the draft in May or 5th or 6th, or the lottery May 5th or 6th, usually around the first round of the play, sometime during the Stanley Cup playoffs, and that's all about right.
Yes.
All right, let's move on to Hurricanes news. Brandon, you and I are always a big proponent of hockey becoming a big part of the community. Well, it's happening again. Hockey is expanding in North Carolina to the town of Apex. They will celebrate the grand opening of 2 new street hockey rinks. That is awesome. They're going to have a big event this Saturday, by the way. So if you want to get out and go see it, go for it. There's going to be food trucks. Go ahead and Google it. It's Raleigh Ball Hockey, I believe, is who is sponsoring a lot of this event. I think there will be some players and organizational members from Carolina Hurricanes being there. I think this is awesome. I played street hockey when I was growing up. Gosh, I loved playing. It's always so much fun. This is really, really awesome to see. And a lot of it was built by just members of the community, which is even more amazing.
Yeah, I started out playing street and roller hockey myself. I want to skate on those new rinks. They look really, really cool. I would love to go visit those one day, and I will one time when I'm down there. And it's really good for the community because, one, you're in a warm climate. Ice time is hard to come by. Having something like that is really good for if you just want to get out there and skate, or if you want to just go out there and shoot some pucks and you don't want to spend the money or try to get the ice time to go to the rink and do it. Because I can tell you from being a beer leaguer, I've had a lot of 11:30 p.m. puck drops. I would love to have something where I can just go out there, throw a pair of rollerblades on, and shoot some pucks. And
So
just
I'm
have
not
fun.
entirely confident if this is rollerblade. I think this is pure like street hockey when you're not using rollerblades. So this is
So
on your feet.
shoes only.
I
Oh,
believe so.
well, that's interesting. They went through building 2 of those for not allowing rollerblades because
So if
that's
they might have some rollerblade situations, but if you take a look at the rink, there's basketball hoops. So you have the rink all this way, and then you have basketball hoops going the other direction.
oh yeah, the first roller hockey rink I ever played on had that.
And now I think it could be, but from my understanding, this is sponsored by Raleigh Ball Hockey. What ball hockey is, you're on no skates, no
Yes.
rollerblades or no roller skates. They are a big part of this group, so there are no skates. I do not believe involved in this case. I could be very wrong about that, but I do believe that is the case here. Or they might have instances where they are, because again, it's a really nice facility they did. It's outside. It's going to be super awesome. Hockey is just exploding in the triangle. It's awesome. So if you want to play hockey, maybe you can't skate. I'm not the best skater, but this is something fun that you could go do, whether you play forward, defenseman, goaltender. Go out and you don't have to get a lot of equipment. You don't have to get skates. You can get it's just from my remembrance, it's shin pads, cage, hockey stick, and I think like a chest protector, and then obviously protect the family jewels. But yeah. Other than that, I think it's awesome.
AB's the ball hockey expert. I don't know a whole lot about it. But yeah, no, it's really cool that they're expanding the game like that down there, because it when I was growing up, I remember there were like 4 rinks in the Triangle, the one on Fort Bragg and 2 in Charlotte, I believe. And now there's significantly more than that, which is really, really awesome. So I'm really glad that they're doing stuff like this now. It's good. It's good outreach for the community. It'll get people engaged with the team. I like it a lot.
I completely agree. All right, so Brendan Moore stated that Svechnikov will return to the Montreal game. That is this Friday. So it is Friday night in Raleighwood. Andrei Svechnikov is coming back. They announced some lines today. I think Svech is on the 4th line. Where do you slot him at? Do you think he's slotted in the right spot, or do you disagree with the head coach?
I think that they're just putting him there to let him get up to speed. And I think that they'll bump him back up after that. It's just he's had a long layoff, so you don't want to just throw him out there with Aho and Jarvis or anything like that, because those guys play some really important minutes. I mean, everybody plays important minutes, but normally when those guys are out there, they're in situations where they're trying to score. So I think it's more so just let him get spun up, not playing super heavy minutes, and then he'll bump. I wouldn't be surprised if it's one period before he's up the lineup again. I think that's just to get him going.
Yeah, and I tend to agree. I think you start him on this. I think he ends up playing. He should end up playing on that first or second line. If I'm putting him on the first line, it is not a slight against Jarvis or Blake. That's a small line, and you might need somebody bigger on it.
If Aho's the biggest guy on the line, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine. It's just I think you need to have a bigger, more physical guy on that line, other than Jarvis or Blake. And I don't really care which one bumps off versus which one doesn't. I think they both have earned the right to be there, so I hate demoting one of them to the second line. But I think Svech should play there because Aho and Jarvis or Blake need someone bigger on that line.
Yeah, if Sebastian Aho is the biggest guy on the line, that's not going to work. Svech, I would move Blake off of it, and that's nothing against Blake. It's just Aho and Jarvis have really, really excellent chemistry, and Jarvis has shown he can play left wing now. So maybe you can put Svechnikov on the right and let him play his natural position. And, maybe he starts scoring again. Maybe that offensive touch, that scoring touch comes back if you do that. But I personally would move Blake just because Aho and Jarvis's chemistry is unmatched. They have more chemistry than Aho and Teravainen even did.
Yeah, I don't disagree there. Next talking point we have here, I think, is a fascinating one. There are 6 Hurricanes players listed to Elite Prospects Top 100 Under 23 skaters. Canes are one of only 5 NHL teams with at least 6 players listed. Seth Jarvis, number 7. Logan Stankoven, number 47. Alexander Nikishin, number 51. Bradley Nadeau, number 86. Scott Morrow, number 94. Jackson Blake, number 98. Anyone on that list surprise you? Or who do you think should be higher?
I think Nikishin should be higher, but I think that's just more so the fact he hasn't come over to North America yet. So there's always the argument of like, oh, well, we have to see if he can adjust to the North American game. A lot of the KHL rinks, including SKAs, are down to North American sized ice now. They have the regular 200 by 85. So as far as like adjusting to the size of the ice, that's not going to be a big problem for Nikishin. People will start noticing how good he is here, because you'll notice out of everybody on that list, he's not attended an NHL training camp. He has not played in an NHL game. He's the only one. And they didn't say Artemonov on there, right? And all the ones you listed. Okay, and see, that's someone else everyone's sleeping on, but don't worry, his time will come. There will be many discussions about him before too long. But I think Nikishin's a little bit low. Everybody else, I think, pretty solid ranking. I looked through it this past weekend, and I have no complaints about any of them. I'd bump Nikishin up to at least the top 30.
I think that's fair. I thought Nikishin was a little low as well. Seth Jarvis, I think, is where he belongs. And I love this. I think it shows Carolina's depth and roster, potential roster players. I think it's deep. Our young core is deep. So when you have people like, was it Michael Rupp saying Carolina's set back for years to come? I'm like, okay. Do you not know a player named Alexander Nikishin, Bradley Nadeau, Scott Morrow, Jackson Blake? Carolina's in a heck of a good position just because we lost Natchez, who I don't think was going to be here at the end of that contract anyway. And I had been saying, if you're not going to get the deal done this offseason, you got to trade him either this deadline, this offseason, or next deadline, right? You cannot afford to let him go for free. Where I don't like the overall package that we got technically for him as a general thought. I think there were just, how everything went down, I think was very unfortunate. But I'm not going to complain about having a good young player. Do I think we needed another small young player? No. But, we have 2 first-round picks that can be turned into something. So, it's assets. You recouped assets. And, I think you're in a good spot. Logan Stankoven, a top 50. I think that's good. He's a good young player, smaller guy, but so is Marty St. Louis, right? I mean, he was a small guy, a heck of a player. If Logan Stankoven turns into the next Marty St. Louis, or maybe Seth Jarvis does, I'm not going to have much of a complaint about the future of this franchise. Alexander Nikishin, I've seen people compare him to Cale Makar. If he's half as good as Cale Makar, do you think people are going to say that Carolina's in a bad spot? I don't think so.
No. One of the things with Mike Rupp, and I was watching something earlier where he was doing an interview with Taylor Hall, and Boyle was there too, and he kept looking at his watch, and he just didn't seem very interested in Taylor Hall talking about Raleigh. He was talking about how he likes it in the weather and everything else like that, and how he likes the locker room and the guys and everything. And Rupp just looked like he just didn't want to be there and hear any of that stuff. I don't know what his issue is with Carolina, but there have been teams that have had way better off seasons with way worse results than what Carolina had this past off season. And part of the reason this team exceeded expectations is because of the culture that Brendan Moore cultivates. That's why you have someone like Eric Robinson, who we didn't even think was going to be on the opening night roster, come in here and make the impact that he has. So, but yeah, Rupp's wrong about that, but Rupp's been wrong about everything. I don't think he could point North Carolina out on a map without being wrong about it when it comes to hockey at this point.
And you know what I'll say? Michael Rupp, if you listen, I doubt you do, you're welcome on our podcast anytime to talk about this and tell us why Carolina, why Bradley Nadeau, Scott Morrow, Jackson Blake, Alexander Nikishin, Logan Stankoven, and Seth Jarvis don't make this franchise brighter. I'm willing to bet you probably wouldn't tell him no to come on the Warding Take either to defend himself or to answer the question from Hurricanes fans and people who actually watch this team. Why do you think Carolina is put themselves in a bad spot? Again, I'm offering I am extending the invite, sir. You can come on anytime. I am not afraid of any kind of conversation. I'm willing to bet you would say the same, but I'll let you speak for yourself.
Yes, absolutely. I'd be totally cool with doing that. That being said, it's never going to happen. But then again, we also thought Mikko Rantanen wouldn't be a Hurricane, and we also didn't think he would be a Hurricane for only 13 games before being gone. So stranger things have happened. Now, one of the other things that, as far as our prospect pool goes, where we just talked about, the top 6 it was 6 in the top 100, right? And that's even before you mention Charles Alexis Legault, for example, who I think is a prospect that a lot of people are kind of underrating. Like, we are really deep at every position except top 6 centers, and that's a hard thing to fill, and goalies, but also a hard thing to fill.
And I'll say right now, you have 2 first-round picks from Dallas. Maybe you draft a center. Maybe you get lucky. Maybe you trade that for a center, or maybe you sign a center this free agency. Carolina is in an awesome spot this offseason. It does not matter what happens in the playoffs this time. I'm going to say that right now. I think Carolina has a path to the Eastern Conference Finals, and I think that's because it's going to be a really weak Eastern Conference. I think the 2 best teams are going to be the Hurricanes and the Panthers, because I still think the Capitals are frauds. I could be wrong, but the last time they were this good, they lost in the first round to the Carolina Hurricanes. So, I think the Washington Capitals are frauds. I think Ovechkin's going to break the record and not give an absolute crap the rest of the season. So, yeah, I think they're frauds. I think they're out in the first round. I don't care who they play. I think they're out in the first round. And at that point, Carolina has, in my mind, a clear path to the Eastern Conference Finals. You win a game, you never know what happens. I think it's going to be Carolina versus Florida in the Eastern Conference Finals. I think any team out west that's currently at a playoff spot can beat the Hurricanes right now. I just do. I think they're all better than us. But in my mind, it doesn't matter if we lose in the first round, the second round, the third round, or the Stanley Cup Finals. This is not our year. Anything
I don't think it
other
is.
than a first-round exit, I think, is a win for this team, given the current roster makeup. If you look at it, it is not as good as it was last year. That's a fact. We've all said that. Anything that happens this year with this roster is icing on the cake, right? It's next season. It's when we have all this money. When this core is all basically under contract. There is nobody big you have to re-sign this offseason. So what happens this offseason, right? Who do you go get? You've got the money to focus on bringing in Mitch Marner. If he, in my mind, I think if Marner's out in the first round, he's a free agent. So go sign Mitch. Mitch, he might be the guy that's like, you know what? I've been in a big market. Let's go somewhere where I don't have to feel like I'm defending myself every 5 seconds. Come to Carolina, right? Carolina fans in general are pretty patient. It takes a lot before we start to be like, oh, I don't know about you. Carolina's got the cap space to offer him 10 plus. If Bennett isn't able to reach a deal in Florida, there you go. There's your second line center. So I think Carolina's in a great position. So again, Michael Rupp, you don't think that's the case? Please, respectfully, come on our podcast. I will talk to you. We will have a conversation. And I would love to hear why you think that Raleigh and Carolina aren't a hockey market. And 2, I've set our team back. As I look at these prospects, I look at the future, I look at our situation, I don't see anything bad.
Yeah. As far as okay, I'll tell you what. Let's do one thing real quick, if that's all right.
Go for it.
Let's both name a center that we would love to get for a second line center. That it can be anybody, but not a free agent. Someone we would have to trade for. Someone we'd have to flip those 2 first-round picks. It doesn't even have to be realistic. Who would you want?
I want Tage Thompson.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Him or Dylan Larkin would be my first 2 choices.
Tage Thompson's a big center.
He's fast too. He uses his frame really well.
And he's a guy, and I think what's really crazy, I don't think Tage Thompson's unrealistic.
Yeah, and see, it sucks because since they like, one thing that I think it makes it a little bit harder to potentially acquire someone like that is they don't have Dylan Cousins now either. I mean, yeah, they brought in it was Josh Norris, right, that they traded him for?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's like maybe you can still get Tage Thompson out of there, but it's like...
So the reason why I say it's unlikely but not impossible, because Buffalo has been so bad. He is a young player. He wants to win. If it's not happening there, he's going to ask for a trade. And someone will take him because his contract is not insane.
I'd package those picks up and a prospect not named Nikishin to get that done.
I would completely agree. If we're talking free agent centers, my top 2 would be Sam Bennett or John Tavares. Sam Bennett is the long-term solution. John Tavares is the interim solution.
I'd rather go with the intern solution there, just because I would like a little bit more of an offensive upside for a second line center. Sam Bennett brings you the physicality, the intangibles, the really good defense, and he chips in plenty of offense, but it's like he doesn't score that much more on average than KK.
I think that's fair. I think the point with Bennett is he brings in that physicality where KK is about the same size and doesn't. But I don't disagree. I've liked Tavares now for, what did I say, the beginning of the season. I thought Tavares could be a deadline acquisition if they weren't going to re-sign him. And it sounds like I think Toronto's having a hard time deciding, do we move on from both Tavares and Marner? Do we sign just one of Tavares and Marner? They're also going to have a lot of cap space, but that's because $20 million of it was tied up in Tavares and Marner. I like Tavares. I don't know if he would come here, maybe. But I think he provides leadership. I think he provides experience. I think he provides talent. And I think he's still capable second line center. Sign him to a 2-year, $7-8 million deal, kind of like what you did to Orlov, and take the time. It's a great player. And then you make a run over these next 2 years, and then you're not locked into that. Maybe a draft to center, trade up in the draft, get you a center that you really wanted, and I think that makes a lot of sense too.
And as far as one more short-term solution, I don't think Nashville would trade him because I think they see this year as they see this year as a fluke, and they see next year as okay, we're going to get it together with most of the players we have. I would really like to see them maybe go for Ryan O'Reilly. I think he'd be a perfect fit in Brandon Moore's system. He's really good defensively. Selke winner, if I remember correctly. Um, you know, I think that would be a good short-term solution because he would have 2 years left on his contract. So that
So
could be a good
Ryan
one.
O'Reilly is Nashville is treating Ryan O'Reilly with a no trade clause. So at this deadline, they went to him and he said, "I don't want to go anywhere." So they aren't moving him. So he wants to stay in Nashville. As long as he wants to stay there, he's going to stay in Nashville.
Okay, then that one's off the board. Then I didn't know that actually.
It was something Elliot Friedman talked about. The organization gave a lot of people no trade clauses. They did not give it to him. And at the end of the day, they went to him and said, "Hey, we didn't give this to you, but we're going to treat you like we did."
Yeah, see, that's really cool too because he's a veteran player and he's been around for a long time. Like I like that when organizations do that, kind of like we did the same thing for Nate just during the off season. Like he didn't have any sort of no trade clause, but the organization still like engaged with him and gave him some say of where he could potentially go, and that bodes well for us attracting free agents later. Like if someone like John Tavares becomes available, then he's going to be like, okay, the organization works with the players. If this isn't working out, I know that they'll help me get somewhere else and that I'll have some say in it. That bodes really well for us in terms of attracting free agents.
Yeah, we tried to do that with Tony. We did it with Rantanen. We did it with Holla, by the way. So it's not like we don't respect a player when they say, "Hey, this isn't working out." We have. In every situation, we have. But yeah, all right, let's move on to my last point here. And I think this is really the probably the most important conversation to have, and it's the one that I think is you can take out of this Nashville game, and that is the starting goaltender for the playoffs. I think if you asked Rod 2 weeks ago, the answer would have been Kochetkov, but Kochetkov has not been very good since the Los Angeles game. He has been shaky. He has been iffy. He is reminding me of the Kochetkov that was pre-Freddie Andersen coming back. So what do you do? As of right now, I'm leaning Freddie. And I don't think Freddie's been all. I think Freddie's had some iffy goals allowed in most of these games. So I'm still leading Freddie because overall, I think Freddie has been better in all of his starts, and I think Kochetkov has had 3 really bad ones.
Freddie is the better goalie right now. He hasn't played a lot of the season, so maybe there won't be so much of a fatigue factor. The injury he had that kept him out of the lineup wasn't nearly as scary as what kept him out of the lineup last season, thankfully. Yep. I think that, Freddie's got to – if it started tomorrow, Freddie's the guy. I mean, we still got, 12 games left? That can change between now and then, but right now it's like Kochetkov is still lacking in control in a lot of ways. He's gotten a lot better about it, but he's backslid a little bit, whereas Freddie, I feel like he's been much more consistent as far as those two go. Right now, he's the starter in the playoffs.
I tend to agree. Again, I think Carolina's biggest weakness is goaltending. I really, really do. I love Kochetkov. I do. Freddie, it's so hard for me to get out of my head what happened last year. And it's been really hard for me to get it. You were there. I was there in Game 6 against the Rangers. And that's just like seared into my brain what happened. So I'm concerned about starting Freddie in the playoffs because we lost that series against New York, not because the Rangers were good. I don't think they were good. Not because Shesterkin was good. I don't think Shesterkin was lights out good. It was because in Game 6, Frederik Andersen was so bad. And I don't know. It's hard for me to get that out of my head, and I'm concerned about it. I don't know if you feel the same way or you're just pushing it aside, but I have a concern there for the goaltending.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I kind of do too, but what I think it comes down to is that the goaltending matchup in that series with the Rangers, it came down to – it was basically the battle of timely saves, that entire series. And Freddie, if he can get back to 2022, 2023 Freddie, we'd be fine. And I think that he has that capability. But, I had a perfect view of the 2 goals he let in the third period. The 2 goals he let in the third period. Both of those can't happen. Yep. But it's also like he's not so far – he hasn't regressed so bad from that moment to where I can sit here and safely say, all right, this won't work. it's still at a point where I think he can avenge what happened that night in Game 6. I think he's still got that capability. Not to mention, this is his contract is expiring now. Even if he doesn't stay in Carolina, I'm sure he's going to find a landing spot if he wants to keep playing. But I think he wants, while he knows he's got a shot, he wants to try and get to the promised land again. So I wouldn't count him out, but I understand your concern.
So this is my last question for you, and we'll use this to wrap it up. Like you said, Freddie's contract's expiring. The goalie market this offseason is not good. So if you're Carolina, there is a match to be made with John Gibson. Freddie Andersen is a free agent goaltender. Because the answer is really going to be is how does the franchise and the organization view Kochetkov? If Carolina views Kochetkov as you're the guy, we're comfortable with you being the guy, we need to find a solid backup. Do you sign James Reimer? Or do you view Kochetkov as, okay, you're not the starter, you're never going to be the guy. We're going to go out and trade for a 1A, 1B goaltender and John Gibson. We're going to flip one of those Dallas picks because that's probably what it's going to take. So we're moving a Dallas pick to Anaheim. Gibson's coming back. Or, again, you view Kochetkov as the 1A, 1B. You give Freddie Andersen another year contract. I personally lean towards Gibson or Reimer.
I say go get John Gibson. Reason being is because you can have a dynamic there with so John Gibson will have what, 2 years left on his contract when the season's over, if I remember correctly.
I can look it up real quick.
Okay, so if he does have 2 years left on his contract, which is what I believe, and I think he has a 6-something cap hit, 6 million something. Just thinking about it off the top of my head, I actually don't have my phone with me to look. But John Gibson, the cool thing about that 2-year bridge that you have there with him is that's 2 years that maybe you find that extra gear with Kochetkov, and then he still reaches that starter potential, albeit, being a late bloomer, he would be at that point. So 2 years left?
2025, okay. 2026. His last year contract will be 2026, 2027 at a $6.4 million contract hit.
Okay. Yeah. So I would do that just because it becomes a versatile situation at that point that allows you to have an experienced guy and have a 1A, 1B situation, a legitimate one, but it also doesn't totally close the door on Kochetkov being the guy 2 seasons from now. Some goalies are so hard to predict in their development. It is insane.
And Gibson's only 31.
Yeah. So it's like you would have, if you bring in John Gibson in the offseason by a trade, you give Kochetkov 2 more years to turn into the guy, and you don't have to give up on him yet. And then you'll have that determination. But at the same time, you also have someone who would definitively be ahead of him on the depth chart in the meantime, and you still have the option for Kochetkov to maybe be that guy later. So I would absolutely go for John Gibson. Now, like you said, if we think Kochetkov is the guy, bring Jimmy home at that point and let him be the backup.
Yeah, because you can sign probably Reimer to a 1-year, $1 million contract. So you go on the cheap side for goaltending, and you let Kochetkov take the crease. And it's not like Reimer can't win. Dude only won in Carolina. He would lose like 2 games a year. I'm exaggerating, but that's basically what it was. His numbers weren't always that good, but the numbers that mattered which were the wins and the losses.
Yeah.
Reimer, that was Ronta. Ronta struggled out at the end of the year, but that was a couple years ago. Ronta has since retired. But you have James Reimer, who is still playing, I think still capable, and would be a solid backup if you decide to go the backup route. And by the way, can play if Kochetkov gets in his slump. So you're not in a bad spot if Reimer plays 4 or 5 games out of 6.
Yeah, no, I agree. I absolutely agree with that. And, as good as Carolina defends, it's like, okay, for example, a team like Edmonton that doesn't defend that well and has to outscore their problems, if they had a better goalie than Stuart Skinner, they probably won the Stanley Cup last year. Like,
I also wouldn't mind going to get Mrazek.
That's too much chaos at once if it's Mrazek and Kochetkov, because both of them, I cannot count the number of times I was sitting there turning blue from holding my breath from something they were doing, because I swear it's like, you remember that poke check that Mrazek made in that one overtime game in Florida when Aho scored the overtime winner? I think Pyotr Kochetkov was watching that game and he was like, "That's a good idea. I'm going to do that, but more." And here we are.
But I don't disagree. I think going to get Gibson, I think makes a lot of sense. But we've been talking for an hour, so I'm going to wrap this up. Brandon, thank you for coming on here, chatting with me. It's been fun as always, sir.
No, dude, absolutely. I really appreciate you having me on.
All right, everybody. I hope everyone has a wonderful night, and we will see you guys next time.